Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Herrington. I'm the COO, Chief Operating Officer, Executive Vice President of Operations for Extra Space Storage. You guys know me. Who you don't know is with me today is my guest. It's Olivia Jaramillo. And Olivia has a very interesting background, and we're thrilled to have her here with us today. She is the strategic leadership consultant and also a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. She is currently the director of public outreach at Equality Utah. She was born and raised in Mexico, and she's also a retired veteran with the U.S. Air Force. So thank you, Olivia, for your service. But without me stealing the show here, I'd like for Olivia to introduce herself and tell us about her story.
Thank you so much, man. I'm super excited to be here. I think we can do a lot of great work, and it seems Extra Space is really doing some great things. So I'm thrilled when I was approached to come here and be part of this conversation with all of you. It was I immediately jumped at the opportunity, and thank you. So my name is Olivia Jaramillo, and I was born and raised in central Mexico. And I don't know if anybody's ever been there, anybody who's going to be viewing this in the central state of Zacatecas. And I don't know, I grew up there, very conservative family. We were Catholic. We are Catholic. We're very strict Catholic. It's also very synonymous with other Christian faiths in that way. And I immigrated to the United States when I was 14 years old. And that was a huge change for me, and it was hard getting used to a different culture. And I mean, it's one of those things where in growing up in Mexico, we always saw America as the land of promise, as everything that it stands for, the land of freedom, and it was something we truly admired. And then coming here, it was a culture shock in a good way, but then also in other ways, it was a bit of a shock, even acculturating to the Mexican American culture, which is different from my native culture in Mexico, and really kind of navigating those spaces, learning how to speak English, all of these little things that contributed to moving to a different country. And if you've ever done so, if you've ever explored a different country, you can probably understand how it can be kind of shocking at first. And then when I did high school, once I graduated from high school, I kind of was looking around El Paso, Texas, because that's where I went to. And then I was thinking, I don't want to just stay here. There's nothing wrong with El Paso, but I don't want to just stay here. So I wanted to see the world. I always wanted to travel to Europe. I always wanted to go to all these places. But at the same time, I wanted to get my university, my college education. So I kind of did both. And I know this is sounding like a TV commercial, like an Air Force recruiting commercial, but I was literally driving with some friends and we looked to the right and there was the recruiting office. So I went to active duty and I joined the United States Air Force. I proceeded to do that for the next 20 years of my life. And that was a great adventure. That is how I always describe it. I served on several tours to Iraq when we were in that conflict. I served on several humanitarian missions into Africa. That was an incredible experience as well. And it's always a part that I talk about the military. That is, it's not really talked about enough, all of the humanitarian work that we do. And I love to shout that out because there are so many great things that we don't even realize our U.S. military is doing. So if anybody is on the call, if anybody's a veteran or serving on guard, reserve duty, thank you for your service. And so I was stationed 7 years in Europe, and that was tough. Shopping in Paris, that was, let me tell you, that was tough. And then one of my last assignments was directing honor guard operations out of Hill Air Force Base. And again, I had a great adventure in the military. I was very, very, I don't know, it really fulfilled that thing about traveling. And then another great experience I had in the military, Matt, was ever since I was little, I've always kind of known that there was something different about me. I don't want to say not normal because that is how we're working on changing language, or just understanding things a little bit differently. And I've always felt myself different inside, different to what my dad wanted me to be, to the norms and culture in my culture in Mexico, and even here in North America, like in the
Right.
United States. And I've always felt different. That's something that never kind of went away. Especially growing up in the mid 80s in Mexico, I had no idea what transgender was. And that word wasn't really put out there. Like there was another word around back then called transsexual. And all I was told by my family was that those people were prostitutes, strippers, drug users, all of these things that as a kid you think, well, that's not really what I want to be. And I thought to myself, that's not what I want to be. I want to be a real girl. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's something that followed me throughout my whole life into my military service. And in 2012, we started hearing rumors that there was going to be a change in policy that would allow active duty members or other people to just be able to serve while being openly transgender. And in 2016, when the policy did become active, I was right there at the door to do it, and I prepared myself for years for when this happened. And I think I was like the fourth or fifth nationwide to be able to do so, to take advantage of this policy. And I braced myself for this hit because it was a coming out. Right, when somebody comes out, it's scary. It's almost kind of as scary as saying you're a Lakers fan in Utah. It's like it can be really scary, and I braced myself. I had a lot to lose. I had a certain rank. I led a squadron. I had troops. I had people that I mentored. What would they think? I had no idea, and I was so surprised, Matt, to receive nothing but love and support from up and down my chain of command, and it was such an incredible experience that people would approach and say, "Hey, I want to be able to support you. Do you mind like just cutting me some slack on pronouns?" Or, "Hey, do you mind sharing a little more with me what this means? Because I really don't know what this means." And it opened my eyes to there's a right way to do this work, advocacy. There's a right way to really frame it, because the majority of people in the workplace, in any workplace, not just in the government, we just don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And that's what it really opened my eyes to saying, we can find common ground on things. And then from there, we can really build on it, because most people are open to learning something. And really, it's those extremes where you hear all of the bad things and whatnot. But the overwhelming majority of people are open to learning something different and really understanding an issue. And it really, once I retired from the military, it kind of led me into politics, and then it led me down into my work with Equality Utah, into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's always been a great opportunity to kind of share my story, because it kind of blows people's minds in a way, because you see all of these things: immigrants, transgender, retired military veteran. You're like, but those aren't supposed to coexist with each other. I don't know. I love what I do, because it's such a great opportunity to really connect with others.
That's an amazing story, Olivia, and I appreciate you being so candid and sharing that. That means a lot to me, and I think it's brave of you to talk about these things, and also talk about things like finding common ground, and that's awesome. And again, I really appreciate your military service. We also have a ERG group that's military oriented, and for your service and overseas in Iraq, and your humanitarian efforts like you talked about in Africa, very commendable. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me share. And thank you. I love when I hear that there's veteran ERGs, because more often than not, sometimes we are a bit of an afterthought, and it's great that we can still shout out our troops. Our veterans. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next question. The next question I have for you is, obviously we're here as part of Pride Month, and I'm curious, what's Pride Month mean to you? And what message would you have for our team, our company, about Pride Month?
Yeah, so It's like every single year, June is Pride Month. People get ready for that explosion of rainbows everywhere because it literally feels like that's what it is. And it's kind of, I always liken it to, it's like the LGBTQ Christmas, because during Christmas time, it's like an explosion of red and Mariah Carey singing "All I Want for Christmas Is You." It's like all of this stuff. and that's kind of what I liken it to always. And you know what, Matt, even some people from different sectors, they've approached me with kind of the same question, and even asking why we utilize the word pride. And I know for some people, being prideful, it's good to have pride in ourselves, but then at the same time, a lot of people, they mirror that word to vanity, and how perhaps we were raised thinking that being a vain person is not a good thing. And now for a lot of people, that's kind of what pride feels like, because it is just such an explosion, like I said, of things.
Right. Yes.
And the one thing that I always point out to people is that the pride for the LGBTQ community, we are such a small community, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it, because we are very fortunate to have a very big voice, but we are a very small community. And even if you break every single one of those letters down, right, LGBTQ, every single one of those, especially the T in there, and everything that it covers, we are such a tiny community that you find so much negative news, let's say, against these communities.
Mm-hmm.
So when we hear the word pride, it's really not about saying we're vain people. It's more about saying we should have pride in ourselves, in loving who we are, in being authentic. Because I always mirror it even to people. Every single morning when you wake up, you're getting ready for work. You put on your makeup, you do your hair, perhaps, you trim your goatee, your beard, whatever it is. You want to look good, don't you? Everybody does. And it's one of those things that we want to kind of start changing that view of the LGBTQ community, that we do go through a lot of depression, anxiety. There is a higher suicidality rate. We also want to turn this conversation to something positive, and to saying you are who you are, and your authenticity is good. And it's okay to have 1 month where we have just this explosion of acceptance, of saying, you know what, who you are is worthy. Because every single member of the LGBTQ community, we're somebody's family. We're somebody's family, brothers, sister, friends, co-workers. We all know somebody within the LGBTQ community. And even when we start thinking of it in that way, we can ask ourselves, don't I believe that this person is worthy of love?
Such a great way to put it. Such a great way to put it. Every year I see this growing too, and I see more flags in my community now. You are right. I think our circles have all expanded. These groups have always been there. And I think that, now we're seeing people become more and more comfortable being their authentic self, being comfortable with who they are, gaining support in the community. And we need to continue that. So thank you for your thoughts on that.
And I'll add a little bit more on that. That authenticity, it's something I always work. I have this thing I call points of empathy. We can all find that point of empathy with that, because we all want to show up as our authentic selves. We all want to feel that who we are. Like, we want our education level to say, you know what, I really want to be a school teacher. And we gear ourselves to that. We feel like that is our authentic self. We can all find that empathy and say, I can understand that. I really feel authentic with my religious faith, whatever it may be. We can kind of say, I can understand a little bit what that would feel like to have to fight so hard to be authentic.
Yes. Yeah. So transitioning into the next topic, I think this folds in pretty well. Or the next question would be, what struggles do the LGBTQIA plus community still face today?
Yeah. So even I'll start with this question. Like I live in Salt Lake City. I live in the state of Utah. I'm sure we're going to be joined by people from all over the place. So hi, everybody. And Here in Utah, we one of the things that people don't know, and people are usually very surprised when they hear this, is that we are the most conservative state in the country with the most protections for the LGBTQ community. And regardless of what you may hear on the news, with everything going on with bills that happened earlier this year, we still are the most protective state for the LGBTQ community among the conservative states. And I love to showcase that to people, because it can show that regardless of where you live, we can find that common ground and move forward. Now, with that being said, we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to the understanding on the day-to-day basis in workplaces. That is where I think is truly the next step. Because just because we have the laws to say, hey, you're protected, that doesn't mean that in the lived experience, it's actually happening. It's like we have all sorts of laws that say, hey, don't go over the speed limit. People go over the speed limit. And this is something very similar to what is happening to the community. I always invite others to ask questions to the community, because that really works in doing away with misconceptions, anything that perhaps you thought was not true. And that is what we are seeing, that we're still struggling with a lot of stigmas out there, even stigmas about whatever it is. Maybe it's our own religious faith, or just whatever it is that we grew up with. And that's okay if we grew up with that, that is our personal upbringing. And those are some of the things that we're still kind of working through, that we see something that is outside of what we know in our lives, like, let's say, the LGBTQ community. Like, suddenly we hear, oh, Frank is transitioning. Frank's going to be a woman now. And it's really understanding those little things. And that is where we're struggling, in that educative piece and understanding.
Olivia, so how do we become better at allyship, and what is allyship to you?
And actually, you said the correct word, which would be the solution for this. I always do mention the word allyship, and if just kind of to really define what an ally is. An ally is somebody that stands with you, that it's not necessarily somebody who is part of a community, but it's just somebody that stands with you and supports. That is really what an ally does. And very much in any workplace, let's take the example. I just created Frank, okay, and I just transitioned Frank. If we talk about, let's say, somebody that we know transitioning in the workplace, and you say, I really like Frank. I think he's a great worker, and he brings a lot to our company. And I like him personally. I just don't understand this. What are they going through? Why would they do this? That's a great way to be an ally. You go to Frank and say, hey, we've known each other for years. I would love to learn a little bit more about you, about this side of you, because I don't want to lose my connection with you professionally, perhaps personally, like we've become good friends. What can we do? What can I do? Like, would you mind telling me, what can I do? That is usually the easiest and best way that somebody can become an ally. A lot of people do think that allies go and you have to wear a rainbow tank top or something like that. You don't have to do anything like that. The simplest thing is listening to understand other people's stories. And really that is the best way to be an ally. Normally whenever, I don't know if this has happened to you, Matt, I'm sure it has, it's happened to everybody. When we are listening or we're part of a conversation, we normally immediately are ready to respond because we want to say something. We're ready to do it. And really, if we sit back, for example, on this scenario, instead of saying, yeah, well, I don't know about this, Frank. My faith doesn't really allow me to understand that. It's really more about just understanding why in their lives, it's not truly affecting us, why in their lives they are going through these changes, and really being open to understanding something that is outside of who we are. And that is the easiest way to kind of be an ally.
I love it. I mean, I've learned a lot today just by listening to you. And you're right. I think oftentimes we want to jump in. We want to think that we know, and we don't know the whole story, but we should ask, and we should be open to that and understanding and
You know what's another way, Matt? It
sure.
kind of goes along with the same example. It feels like nowadays we see more acceptance for the gay community, for the lesbian community, bisexual. We see more acceptance for that. But anybody who is under that transgender umbrella, whether it's Frank transitioning to be a woman or somebody who says the words non-binary, and we're like, what? Like, okay, that the trans woman thing I can get, but I don't know about this non-binary stuff. Again, we can use that same tool of listening to understand. If you hear that Terry came out as non-binary, just saying, hey Terry, I'd love to learn what that means to you because I don't know what that means. And I think you're awesome. And I just want to learn, what can I do for you? And then even with that, another easy thing that anybody can do they immediately start doing is pronouns. And of course it takes work, and even just kind of showing your own pronouns. A lot of people have asked me, hey Olivia, why? Oh, I'm not LGBTQ, I'm not gay, I'm not trans. Why do I have to share my pronouns? And I always kind of bring that back for people and saying you can understand the importance of pronouns. Have you ever been on the phone and you accidentally get misgendered? And this happens a lot more with like men. You immediately like, oh, wait a second. It's sir or mister. And we're immediately hyper aware of our own gender because somebody just called us something we are not. And that is a way that, again, we can say, I can understand how pronouns are important for Terry, for Frank. I can really start seeing how this is important. So really just kind of finding that point and saying, yeah, that they're part of our identity. It's not just something within the LGBTQ community. They're part of everybody's identity. And they really kind of secure who we are because everybody has a gender, right? Everybody does. And that is the importance of it. So you sharing your pronouns, it's letting the entire world that you are aware of the importance of pronouns and that you're willing to respect somebody else's pronouns. That's really all it means. It's those two things, listening to understand and trying your best with pronouns is the best, easiest way to be an ally.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you, Olivia.
Yeah.
So I have one more big question for you. So we do have a very big and diverse company. We have 4,960 employees, and we're stretched over 41 different states. So we have a very diverse group of employees, which we're very proud of. What words of wisdom do you have for individuals who might be struggling to be their authentic selves outside of work or maybe inside of the workplace?
Yeah, thank you. It can be very difficult. It's a very personal journey to come out. And I use the word journey because it is a journey. Whatever it is, if somebody feels that they have a different gender identity that perhaps they were assigned at birth, like their whatever gender they were assigned at birth. If somebody feels that their sexual and romantic orientation is different to what is kind of expected of them, it can be difficult to do that, Matt. It can be very difficult. And I always say that it's a spectrum. And even within that spectrum of, let's say, for example, of romantic sexual attraction, you have heterosexuality and then you have homosexuality, and in between you have so many different ones as well. And even heterosexuality, it's hard to forget sometimes because we talk so much about the other ones. Mm-hmm. Even heterosexuality is a journey because everybody experiences their own orientation differently. And we go through different changes. So when somebody does have something outside of what is tradition or what is norm in a country or in a region or in a company, in their family, it can be very difficult. And the one thing I always commend people that do these transitions, that come out as something different in terms of their orientation. It takes such courage to really do so. And I wanted them to know that there is a community out there that does support them, that does love them, and that there are many people in every single workplace, whether they know it or not, that is willing to respect them, that is willing to be their ally. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but you never know how somebody will react to you coming out. Somebody that perhaps you thought, oh, this person is extremely closed off. And then next thing you know, they become your biggest ally.
Right.
So take your time and be courageous at your own pace.
Very good. Okay, so I took away several things today, but to recap a couple, we're gonna do a better job of listening to understand. We're gonna ask questions, or use pronouns, and then we're gonna, make it comfortable. We're gonna be empathetic with people, produce a higher level of understanding for each individual person's journey. Anything you would add to that?
It's, as an ally, you make mistakes. We all do, with pronouns or with anything. That's okay. If that's, again, I always say journey, maybe I've read too much Tolkien or something, but it's part of that journey. And we're all on it, and mistakes happen. The whole goal of this is progress, not perfection. The whole point of this is to keep going on that road. And really, that's how you build allyship in the workplace.
Very good. Olivia, thanks for helping us progress forward today. This was an unbelievable conversation. I learned a lot. I thank you for on behalf of the rest of Extra Space, for taking the time, for your service in the military, for being bold, for telling your story, and for helping others inside of Extra Space and outside of Extra Space.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Matt, and super, super happy to be here. And I'm here if anybody has any questions. I mean, I would love to see if maybe there's a way to forward them to me. I would love to connect with Extra Space in that way.
Olivia, would you like to share any of your information? How could people contact you or your organization?
So you can contact my organization. It's just equalityutah.org, or you can even find me at info.oliviajaramillo@gmail.com, olivia@equalityutah.org. I'm on LinkedIn. You can contact me personally through any form.
We're going to help get your followership up.
Yes, I need more followers.
All right, Olivia, thank you for your time today, and we really appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.